I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. Oh, quiet.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
Hey everybody, welcome to the John Dennis Report. Gotta put my other glasses on, hold on a second. Come on in. I was saying yesterday, as I've been saying, let me vamp a little bit here while I'm waiting for people to come in. And someone got the impression that I was actually inviting people into the room, and of course I don't do that, although it's actually not a bad idea. Maybe I should do these live if someone would be so interested as to come sit with me in this little makeshift studio that we put together. Welcome again to the John Dennis Report. Before I get into today's topics, I did want to bring up something that I just posted within the last 20 minutes or so on my Twitter page. And I'm going to do this as quickly as I can, just at the risk of letting it eat up the entire time that we spend on the report today. And that is this. So as I recall, Congress passed some liability protections for businesses who were concerned about being sued if someone caught COVID at their business. And I think there was some liability protection, but I think it was sort of limited to, and it was a little unclear how it would apply. And, lawyers can find ways around these liability protections. So in the meantime, we have this really scary prospect of the government coming up with, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, with the government coming up with a program that requires you to get a vaccine passport. And that to me is terrifying. The beginning of the prospects of abuse in that regard are terrifying to me. I'm also sensitive to that because we have the social credit systems in China. China's ethos in this regard is maybe naturally, maybe by design, is bleeding over into the United States. Something that terrifies me. The Orwellian aspects of that really would keep me awake at night if I let it. So one thing that we can do to stay a step ahead of the government and to address the business's concerns over liability if customers get infected or if their employees get infected with COVID and have, in their liability increases as the number of infections and the outcome of the infections get worse, right? So, so instead of having, a government top-down solution, the market can provide solutions. They can just come up with their own ideas, and people can voluntarily, choose to come up with systems. So, like, for example, let's say you're a business that says, hey, listen, we'll serve you on takeout. You can order something from us. It's a clothes shop or a hardware store or whatever. But we're only letting people inside our location if you have proof that you've been vaccinated or that you've got immunity because you already had the infection. So if you have a little wristband that tells us that you had it, we'll let you in the store. So I just posted a tweet about this, and if you can you go, let Mario put me into that wristband thing? Yeah, there you go. People see that now?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I did was I just went onto within a few seconds I went onto this thing called whatever that is. I just did a Google search on it, and they allow you to put little customized wristbands together. So I said, get a blue one that says vaccinated and John Dennis report on the backside. And, then that will allow restaurants and shops and, theaters and that sort of thing to feel comfortable that you're not likely to spread COVID on their premises and expose them to liability. That's all it is. Now, by the way, the businesses may not be that concerned about it. They might not require this. They may not care. People who've been vaccinated might say, I have concerns about, exposing my medical records to society at large, so I'm not going to do this. It's all voluntary, folks. That's all it is. It's all voluntary. But this is a far superior choice, a much better direction to go in. As simple as it was, because I concocted it off the top of my head within a couple of minutes. As simple as this is much better than having a Joe Biden-driven government surveillance system that watches you and forces you, compels you to tell people whether or not you've been vaccinated. That's all this is. I'd rather let people voluntarily give up the information, and let businesses decide who they want to let into their shop based on their vaccination status than have the government do it. So that's the only point. And I was a little nervous putting that tweet out there because I knew people would misconstrue it. I know people are sensitive. I'm sensitive too. And I'm just trying to think about ways, around it. And of course, there were people who were, who didn't quite get what I was going for here. But hopefully that explains it. The last thing that I want is a government mandated surveillance program. It would how heartbreaking would it be in this country to have that? Let's move over, by the way, to Mario. Let's move over to, instead of the Cruz thing, let's go to that Free Beacon article, which is, I think, the next one, next tab. Yeah, put that up there. Oh, the top article, if you can. Yeah, there you go. Thanks. So folks, can they see this now?
Yes, they can.
So this is what I'm talking about here. I'm concerned about, this is an article from the Washington Free Beacon that says that Biden's team appears to have entertained an electronic test and trace program pioneered by the University of Illinois that would have let businesses deny services to patrons based on their health data, a PowerPoint presentation obtained by the Washington Free Beacon shows. The program has eerie echoes of China's surveillance system, which uses data from citizens' phones to impose quarantines. Now, one of the concerns that people said about my system, which I don't think she understood, was, that HIPAA, you have HIPAA protections, which means that, people can't have access to your medical records. You can't be forced. People cannot. Your doctors, insurance companies, healthcare systems can't be allowed to to divulge your medical history. That see, my system is a voluntary thing. It's a voluntary transaction between people. You can choose to tell people that you've been vaccinated, but in this system that has eerie, as this says here, eerie echoes of China's surveillance system, Joe Biden was entertaining actually forcing people to give up that information and and exposing them to anybody and everybody out there to see whether or not you got the vaccine, and that is terrifying to me. That's exactly the sort of system that we're trying to avoid. So what I try and think of is, okay, what are the problems? Are they legitimate? And if they're legitimate, what are the free market solutions, the voluntary solutions that we can use as opposed to the government heavy hand solutions? And that's, if you read this article in the Free Beacon, it's really kind of scary. Now, in fairness, they didn't move forward with this campaign. Apparently they did something about it in South Korea. Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, South Korea all mandated the use of mobile tracking, mobile contact tracing apps, and were largely spared the trade-offs Western countries ended up making. I'm not comfortable with that, with giving up your private medical information, even if it's something as simple as whether or not you got vaccinated. I'm not comfortable with that. But I also have to balance that with the concerns of private businesses and the liability that they may endure. So I think a voluntary system is the best way to go. And this also shows to me, this article, just how willing Joe Biden is to, and when I say Joe Biden, I mean it's really the people behind him. He's just some literally empty suit who can't get through a press conference without, having big charts for him like some third grader. But the people behind him are willing to really, abrogate your rights and in order to expand government in their own power. Okay, let's move on to the next topic here. Let's go to this video from Ted Cruz the other day, because we meant to get to this yesterday. It didn't quite come about, but this is something that let me put this on. This is something that came up. Ted Cruz and a bunch of Republican senators went down to the border, as many of you know, and in that trip, they brought some cameras in and they went into the facilities to take pictures and some video to show people what's really going on down there. Something apparently that Biden, who promised to be the most transparent presidency ever, didn't want people to see. Now, just keep in mind, Biden said that his administration would be the most transparent administration that the U.S. has ever seen. And then let's take a quick look at this video. Let's move it up a little bit so that we actually get to the meaty part of it, Mario.
People, dignity, and respect.
Are you respecting the rights of these kids?
At this point, in terms
You can
of
take control
allowing
in,
access to Border Patrol facilities for reporters, you are being less transparent than the Trump administration.
The Trump administration was turning away kids at the border, sending them back on the treacherous journey, or they were ripping kids from the army.
Can't see because cameras aren't let in. I think the big picture is really clear. Many thousands of people are arriving into this country. Most of them will not leave. All of them, according to Joe Biden, are on track to become citizens. So there are 2 points that people are not considering, and I think they should be. One is the allocation of political power. We talk about voting rights. In a democracy, demographics equals political power. So if you change the demographics of the country, if you bring in a lot more people without the consent of the governed, you dilute the political power of the people who live here. That's a really meaningful thing. And we're talking huge numbers. I started in journalism 30 years ago. 30 years ago, there were 100 million people living in the United States than there are now. 100 million.
All right. Anyway, so you just have that little snippet of it there, where Cruz is at the border, and his chaperone, a Biden administration flunky, is telling Ted Cruz to turn his camera off to not video this. Now, she's saying, "Oh, it's for the dignity of the people there." That's complete and utter bullshit, of course. The reason why she didn't want him to show it is because it's embarrassing to Biden. It would be under normal circumstances just strictly embarrassing to Joe Biden. But the real reason is that it's especially embarrassing to him is because he and the Democrat Party made great waves about how Donald Trump is keeping kids in cages. And here he has not only kids in cages, but adults in cages, and people in facilities quadruple, triple, 6 times overcrowded than what their original capacity was intended to be. And so, this is politically very damaging to him. And so that's the reason why he didn't want Cruz to expose that. Now, I would never suggest. Listen, Ted Cruz did a kind of debate that I did in college. I did it late in my college career. Ted did it early and with spectacular success, and was the debater of the year in parliamentary debate in, I think, 1992, and when he went to Princeton, which was, he was an amazing debater. And if you see him, in interviews and on the House and the Senate floor, he is, really good. Even in the presidential debates, he was really good too. Not entirely my cup of tea on a bunch of issues, but he's really good. So I am uncomfortable, telling him how to handle situations. However, having said that, I think in this situation, had I been there, had I been the senator, I would have said to her, "Excuse me, this is an American facility, American government facility. In my area, I am the senator from this state. I have a First Amendment right, and I don't care which president of the United States is issuing your orders. You will not stop me as United States Senator from taking video of a public facility anywhere in this country, much less in the state of Texas. So you better back down right now." And, I can't imagine that had he stepped in front of her and frankly moved her out of the way gently, but firmly moved her out of the way. He really should have should have threatened her with a lawsuit for violating his First Amendment protections. The United States government shall make no law. I mean, she is not allowed to stop him from taking photographs of a government facility. It's that simple. He's a United States senator. And I certainly would have pulled the U.S. senator, stance. And I would have demanded her name and said to her, look, you're going to be a YouTube star. You are about to become a social media star. What is your name? Why are you the person who is blocking me from taking video of the U.S. border in my state, and I'm a U.S. senator? What is your name? He should have blown her up, and social media wise. And I bet you she would have stopped it right then and there. And then we'd have clear pictures. Now, in some ways, it's almost more damaging what she did, because it's pretty apparent that Biden and his administration, the people who are running his administration, are embarrassed as hell by what's going on. But in any event, I would have done something a little bit different there, and I would have definitely chased her down. And it just goes to show that we are living under an administration that is an absolute terror. And when you combine it with this Biden administration, with the leadership, I hate to use that word, leadership of the House by Nancy Pelosi, we are in a mess, folks. And we've got a big problem on our hands here. I was just running through a summary. I think we're going to revisit this entire segment on Thursday, because I don't think we have enough time to cover it. But I want to give a quick summary of where we stand. We have Joe Biden, who is asleep at the wheel. Guy can't really give a press conference, certainly not the way Donald Trump did, right? He can't take a question from Fox News, who've been perfectly polite with him, if not, challenging. They have certainly been polite to him. He has an order, and that he goes through in terms of the questions that he allows to be asked of him. It's my guess that he had the questions in advance. He was certainly prepared for them, but I think the questions were actually there, and he had notes for all the questions. You have this guy who's clearly, not fully there anymore. You have this woman who's the vice president who's waiting in the wings, and, that cackling laugh of hers is it's easy to dismiss, and it should be dismissed. But I think it really sort of indicates someone who's trying really hard to seem interesting, to seem like wants to be liked. Like somehow she thinks that makes her likable. Now maybe that works with women. I don't know. I was told that she was popular with suburban women. Maybe that laugh connects with them on some level. I think for me it's a real big put off. And also as someone who's met her and spent a little bit of time with her and watched her debate live, from 20 feet away, I'm wildly underwhelmed by her intellectual capacity and her ability to handle, the presidency of the United States. So we have this administration that's a disaster. You have, underneath, in terms of the operations side of the administration, you have Nancy Pelosi operating, the legislative side, which is a train wreck. A woman who sees the whole purpose of government not as a way or a means to allow us to live together in peace and prosperity, but as an adversarial system, very top-bottom, domination, submission driven, and she wants to dominate it no matter what, no matter whose rights get trampled on. She doesn't really care about that. Now, that situation with those people at the top would be bad enough as it is. But let's throw in some other things into the mix. We have social media that is stifling dissent. And not only stifling, you can't, there's certain things you can't say. I've noticed that if I say something about a certain country, I just mentioned earlier, an Asian country that begins with a C and ends with an A, that if I put those tweets out about that country, that they are shadow banned. The engagement is just much lower. It's just a fact. I don't think I'm alone in that. I think some exceptions. Some people are. I think Gordon Chang can write about it because he's kind of a known quantity. But Steve Bannon got banned from Twitter. You think his criticisms of that country had nothing to do with it? That country, by the way, banned him from ever entering it. So anyway, and also driving this social media dissent are the Democrats. Jack Dorsey said that that the Democrats basically dictated to him who they wanted him to go after. That the Democrats were the ones who prevailed upon Amazon Web Services to kill Twitter's competitor, Parler. Jack Dorsey said it. He said it in the days following the Friday after January 6th, whatever that date was, January 8th or 9th or whatever it was. Many of us lost tons of followers on Twitter and other social media, mostly on Twitter. And Jack Dorsey said that was all at the directions of the Democrats. You got a border situation that's breaking down the country. As Trump would say, you can't have a country if you don't have a border. That's certainly true. But it's also what's even worse, and this is something that Tucker Carlson talks about, is that they say Pelosi says ad nauseum that our diversity is our strength. Look, I've been to 70 countries. I love diversity. I love different cultures. But if you have a culture where nobody has anything in common, I don't know. I don't know if that kind of diversity is really our strength. So that's the other problem with the border wall, going down, is that if you keep, letting people in from, countries all over, largely South and Central America, what happens to the culture that binds us here? We have a central government that wants more power, and it wants more power in fewer hands. One of the things that happened last year, and Donald Trump, not a good thing that he did this, gave Thomas Massie a hard time because Thomas wanted people to come in and vote on the first COVID stimulus package. They wanted to make that a consent item with like a few people in the chamber, and Nancy Pelosi effectively, banging the gavel and passing the law by herself. And Thomas said, no, come here and do your jobs. Put your mask on and come and make the vote. If you're going to spend, all of this money and put all of our kids in debt, at least have the decency to come in and pass the law. So he called for a quorum. He didn't get the quorum, but he did get some people to come back. And, that just goes to show him what he was saying was true, was that, that Pelosi and McCarthy and Donald Trump and his people are basically passing huge budget, initiatives. What the hell is that? So anyway, that's what we have. We have a central government gaining in power, and gaining in power in the hands of fewer people. We got a legacy meeting that's basically just repeating talking points from the Democrat Party. That's all they really do at this point. There's no news. They criticize each other. They criticize the other legacy news organizations that don't agree with them. And that's really all they do at this point. There's a disregard for the fundamental protections of government, of life and property. We saw people's livelihoods, their businesses, their homes destroyed. They see it there. We saw it this weekend. Cars getting smashed up in Salem, Oregon, because they drove by with an American flag, off the rear of their flatbeds and their pickup trucks. And Antifa didn't like that, so they smashed their windows with bricks. With no consequence. We had people taking over parts of Seattle and Portland and Minneapolis to this day. Minneapolis is still, has occupied neighborhoods. And the government has given up its authority in those areas. There's a growing authoritarian... hold on a second. Let's move this up. There's a growing authoritarian country slowly imposing, and this country is this foreign country, slowly imposing its media and social discourse rules on all of us. You know, this other country has got an economy that's about 2/3 the size of ours. At some point in the near future, it's going to be, as large, and then it's going to be in 20 years twice as large. You know, think about that. Think about what that means for your kids, for your grandkids. Are they going to have to, watch what they say? Because, are they going to be able to challenge the leadership of that other country? Will this country, basically the leaders here, just be in cahoots with that foreign regime? There's a book out there called 1421, which posits something that other people have said, that Columbus was not the first non-native North Americans to make it to North America, and it's specifically that a Chinese junket, I guess they call it a junk, big wide boat, made it to North America in 1421. There's some evidence of that. And one of the parts of that book that they talk about is people don't realize how powerful the government of that country was at that time. That the emperor had, I think, a birthday or a wedding, and called in the kings of countries from far away, from India, the Arabian Peninsula, Africa, and they had to come and spend a year as the emperor's guest and kowtow, meaning that they had to lay prostrate in front of the emperor and basically kiss his feet. And this is part of, again, that top-down culture that we need to be careful about if this country is going to have the most dominant economy in the world. It's a really kind of a scary prospect. And I think the only way that we can balance it off, well, let me just put this on. I'm going to get through a couple of other points, and then I'll talk about how we can balance it out. There's this ongoing push to take away our protections, people who want to take our rights. And here's the big issue too. We have a situation in this country where we have control over multiple conditioning systems. We have conditioning in our education system. We have the media conditioning, which I just talked about, both social and legacy media. We have corporate ethos leading to advertising that reinforces the messaging that's both in education and the legacy and new media. And as a result, we have a situation that's pretty tough right now. The products that we want to use, all those companies, they want us to support the ideology that's pushed largely by the Democrat Party and by a stronger central government. So how do we combat all this? And I think the key thing is that we have to do the opposite of centralization. Some countries that I can't say are pushing sort of a liberal, economic approach, a liberal business environment, a liberalized economy, but a more controlled and a less free social and political life. You see that in Singapore, for example, where people say, oh, you can live a pretty good life as long as you just keep your mouth shut and go about your business. China, I think, is sort of moving in that kind of a direction, and I don't know if that's the American direction. I don't think that's not who we are. So I think that the way that we combat this is by rooting out the people who want to stifle our freedom of speech, the people who want to stifle. We want to root out the people who want to stifle our freedom of expression, and chase them out of government, chase them out of every sector of life that has an impact on how we all live. I mean, corporations that adopt this ethos of conform or be cast out, we should find alternatives to them. We have to start getting organized about those things. I think the big, powerful companies, You can't attack them right away. You have to keep an eye on them, but you start with the smaller companies and you send them a message that you're gonna only work with their competitors. We need I think about organizing this. We need someone to organize companies to say that they will do business with anyone and they will employ anyone, irrespective of their political positions and their political persuasions. That's, I think, an important thing. I think that's something that we should really start right here in California, right here in the Bay Area. Because I know people who live in the closet in San Francisco are afraid to come out as Republicans or libertarians or whatever, because they're afraid that it's going to impact their careers. They're going to get fired or they're not going to get a promotion. We need CEOs to commit that they will not tolerate that kind of thing, that people's political beliefs and persuasions are not going to impact their careers. And I'm afraid that that's not true right now. So we need to push back on that. We need to push back on companies that will actually, employ these methods of stifling people and not use their products, not use their services, not consume their entertainment media. We should look for other options, So anyway, this is a larger topic. I'm glad we got into it a little bit today. I think that's about it. That's all I want to really cover for the moment. But I think we're going to talk a little bit more about this on Thursday, because we're in a tough spot right now, and we have got to start thinking about ways of countering it. I mean, we can just sort of sit around and complain and say, "Oh, this is really bad, and we're moving in a bad direction." Past the bagels, let's go grab some, go grab some dinner. You have to actually step up and start pushing back, consciously push back, and understand that collectivism of all types that lead to centralization of government power is kind of a form of mass slavery. And you have to really push back and you have to be ready to do that. So this is kind of a consistent theme of the John Dennis Report, something that we continue to fight in all of our broadcasts and writing. So we'd hope that you'd support us by following us on YouTube at John Dennis Report, and on Facebook at John Dennis Report, at Real John Dennis on Twitter and Instagram. And listen to our podcasts. We put them out on both Spotify and on Apple. And continue to come back to the show and tell your friends about it, because we need to continue this conversation and come up with the ways that we are going to fight back and push back against the sort of the onslaught of growing collective, centralized, government control over our lives. Anyway, thanks again for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. We'll be back at 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time and 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Thursday. That's 2 on the West Coast and 5 on the East Coast on Thursday. I hope to see you there. Tell your friends, and we will see you on Thursday.